Welcome to my podcast story, the show where podcasters share the real journey behind their voices, from their first mic check to their biggest milestones. Every episode reveals the lessons, challenges, and breakthrough that shape a podcast star's journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I can't wait for you to hear today's story. In today's episode of my podcast story, we have Jocelyn King, known as the Queen of Online Safety and recognized as a top 10 woman in cybersecurity. Jocelyn hosts the impactful Smarter Online Safety podcast, where she transformed her personal trauma into powerful protection strategies for listeners. After losing over $500,000, her marriage, and her health to a sophisticated cybercrime attack that included home surveillance, Jocelyn rebuilt her life, dedicated herself to preventing others from experiencing similar devastation. As a Silicon Valley executive with over 2 decades of experience and the founder of Smarter Online Safety, she's uniquely positioned at the intersection of personal experience and professional expertise. She's here today to share a compelling journey from cybercrime victim to celebrated advocate, and how her podcast has become a lifeline for those navigating our increasingly dangerous digital world.
Hey, my name is Jocelyn King, and I am the host of Smarter Online Safety Podcast.
Okay, thank you for accepting my invitation to be on the podcast. it sounds
Here, thank you for
it
inviting
sounds
me.
weird saying this again and again because this is the second time. Okay, what's the name of your podcast and what's the podcast about?
So it's called Smarter Online Safety, and it is practical advice and tips and stories in simple, everyday language, telling people what they need to be aware of in cybercrime and how to protect themselves without having to learn a lot of technical jargon, complex, technologies, or very, just uninspired things, but really just everyday stories and advice from top experts and cybercrime
When
survivors.
did you launch this podcast?
I launched it in February of 2025.
Okay. And I'm curious, what was the inspiration that led to you saying, "Oh, I'm going to start a podcast"?
Well, it's kind of funny because I started thinking I'm not going to launch a podcast, at least not for a while, because I launched my company, Smarter Online Safety, in January of 2025. And I offer a lot of free resources and tips to help everyday people learn how to protect themselves from hackers and cybercrime and stay safe online. And we offer low cost classes and group workshops and things like that. And I was not going to do a podcast. I was on other people's podcasts and I was going on to get the word out that way. But more and more people kept saying, "Oh, you should have a podcast." And they also said, I know a lot, and because I've been in cybersecurity for quite a while. And in fact, I was named a top 10 woman in
Wow.
cybersecurity. And but I did that. That was hard won after having been a victim of cybercrime and losing a lot of money, losing my opportunity for promotion at work, losing my 20-year marriage, having just my whole life kind of devastated by cybercrime. And as a result, I got into cybersecurity and got to meet some of the best cybersecurity people in the world and learned from them how cyber criminals work, the business of cybercrime, how to protect themselves. And I said, okay, great, I'll do this for a couple of years, but then I want to go share this information of what I've learned. So I kind of take what I learned you know, in 7 years and make it available in 7 hours for everyday
Wow.
people.
Uh, when you just started sharing the story, your background, and all that, it's as though you knew the question I was about to ask next, and that was, how did your background and personal experience shape the voice and focus of your show? I'm curious. I know you just mentioned the story in passing. I just want us to zoom in a bit. What actually happened led you to say, okay, yeah, cybersecurity, this is what I'm going to do, because you weren't always doing cybersecurity.
Right. Well, it's funny. I was working in a technology company, doing marketing, not tech, but, and I was just making a living and making a life as we all do. And I was targeted by cyber criminals, and they hacked into our network and ultimately, did a long haul um, attack on us, and they were near where I live as well. They had a physical presence, so they actually used their hacking through the network to break into our home. And I had surveillance planted in my home, and just had a lot of had some, threats made and things like this. So that it was terrifying. It was very scary, and it was depressing, and it was overwhelming. And so I was doing what anybody would do in that situation, which is reach out to law enforcement, ask for help. But everywhere I turned, it was kind of like the cyber criminals knew what to do so as not to get
Oh,
caught in every case. So I ended up being the one. Here I am, a victim of all this stuff, having all these bad things happening, and all I'm doing is filling out crime
yeah.
reports. And I'm in the United States, so I'm talking to the US, FBI field agent, and finding out I'm one of a million Americans filing reports for the FBI that year on cybercrime, and those are just the
Yeah,
ones
the
that
fire
are
reports.
filed.
Yeah.
Reported. Yeah, and then I had, and bottom line is I lost, a huge amount of money, and just, my whole life changed. And so the thing that kept me going at that point, wisdom, was that, because there was a point where you're just like, it's just too enormous. I feel like every day I'm getting further behind and it's getting worse. The only thing that kept me going and was my inspiration was I can't let my family and my kids um, go unprotected and not figure out how to help them stay safe in the world and all the people I care about. And and I can't let the bad guys win. So I rallied, and just one step after another led me to being able to learn about the business of cybercrime and work with really smart people and get on the dark web and see where's all this data being sold that everybody's stealing, and how is it being used against everyday citizens. And from that, I was able to learn what I needed to do to protect myself, and also what can everyday people do. There's busy moms and dads, busy college students, busy retired people who you shouldn't have to have a 4-year cybersecurity
Yeah.
degree,
No.
or an IT black belt in order to protect
Yeah.
yourself. So I said, there's got to be a way to simplify this. And that's what I set out to do.
Wow. Your story sounds like a superhero story. I guess we'll call you. What's the okay? We'll call you a superhero.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But I'm
Batman.
I'm an ordinary person. I'm an ordinary person who was put into an extraordinary situation. So I kind of my story is
Yeah.
extraordinary because it doesn't happen all. But I also realize I've met people. I've been fortunate to be able to help a lot of people prevent things and also recover. And because that's what I said, I was looking around online going, okay, where's the checklist for how to get out of this? And it didn't exist. And I said, where's the checklist for how to prevent it? And it didn't exist. And there's tons of resources. I own 50 books that I bought trying to protect myself, but none of them had a simple step by step. Here's what you need to do to protect yourself and then get safer and safer. And I made it my life mission to create it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm
Oh,
doing.
thank you for doing that. A lot of persons, going through that the kind of thing you went through. It leads them to deep depression and so many other things. Some people even end up committing suicide and so many other
It's true.
things. Because it's not just about the money. It's psychological, mental, and so what's the word to use? But it's an attack not just financially, but all
Yeah,
other areas of life.
right.
And I'm glad that you like, oh, I'm going to make gold out of this bad situation. And here you are helping out other persons not to go through the same
Thank
trouble you went through. Wow.
I think whether it's small or large, the attack or the loss, it's still
Yeah, it is.
traumatizing. You're victimized and you feel so vulnerable and traumatized. And so, if you're lucky, you only lose a couple $100. The average person loses $4,400. And many people have lost their entire life savings, or homes, retirements, had their entire lives changed for the worst. And as you said, some people have even taken their lives over it because it's so traumatizing. So and especially in this day and age, there were times in different parts of the world, in different times in history, where you could maybe live in an unlocked house, but in an online perspective, those days are gone. Not only do you need to have locks, you need to have bars on the windows. You need to have security if you want
Yeah.
to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And but we haven't been trained, nobody teaches you how to do it, and it's because it's a fairly new crime in the way it's happening today. So what I do on my podcast, my vision was, well, this way I can have cybersecurity experts on that everyday people don't get access to, and they can talk to me like we're just having a casual conversation and give advice and tips on what people should do to protect themselves. And then I have cybercrime survivors on telling their story of what, the enormity of what they lost and what they went through and the emotional roller coaster and what they learned. So that, the goal is that the listeners of my podcast don't have to go through that
Yeah.
themselves or heaven forbid become another statistic themselves.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for doing that. Like really, really, thank you so much for doing that. I want us to step back. I would have said back in the days, but I just realized the podcast was started in February, so it's still back in the days, but it's not like back in the days. Can you walk us through your very first episode? How did it go?
Well, it's funny. My very first episode, I was solo because I didn't have any. So what I thought, so I got really good advice that I would pass on to anybody considering a podcast, which was it's okay to start small, and that as people are giving you advice of things you could do, like instead of using Zoom, use Riverside, or instead of this, use that, or, you have to have, like some people want to start a podcast, but they don't because they think they have to invest hundreds or thousands of dollars in equipment. And the thing is, you can start with whatever you have. You can start with your
Yeah.
smartphone. And then what I did that was very helpful from a friend of mine, she said, just create a list. Remember, you're just doing season one. And all your great ideas, you can put them in a file called season 2, and then you can review them and improve it later. And I love that because, it's human nature that if we want to do something as good as we can, that we can procrastinate and not get started. And
Yeah.
so for me, and I was traveling, I was actually back in New York City on a brief trip, and I had to just get used to being on camera because I've always been behind the scenes, putting other people in camera. When I ran marketing, I would get, the CEO of the company or somebody who's a top talent there. And I grew up in Hollywood, and so I'm used to, like celebrities, but I liked being behind the scenes. So for me to be on camera, I had to get used to it. And I think maybe a lot of your listeners could relate to that. So I just did a live, view from Times Square and announcing the launch of my podcast. It gave, and didn't even do it live. I did it, you know, on a video
Yeah.
to record it so I could edit it. And I did get some help. I have a great person who edits and posts for me and puts the intro and outro in. I found somebody I could hire to do that because it's more important that I'm building my business and they're doing that. But I could have done that if I'd wanted to invest the time and just to get started. And then my first one was just giving some tips. And then what I did was I booked I booked 7 recordings in 3 weeks. I invited a bunch of guests on, so I got a backlog so that I wasn't
Okay.
scrambling because I have a weekly podcast that drops every Friday. And, so I wanted to get ahead and have several that were in the wings so that if I couldn't get a guest or if a guest couldn't, was sick or whatever, that I wouldn't scramble. And so I did that, and I invited some really great people to be on, and they said yes. And then those people, because they were known, that I could get other good guests on as well. So the other piece of advice I have is, make out your list. I made a list of the top 10 people I wanted on my podcast. And 2 of them, I realized I had to have a much bigger I had to get a following going before I could invite them. But a couple of the others, I thought I can go ahead and invite them. So invite the people you really want on. I invited somebody who's very big and works for a Fortune 50 company and has a huge, he has he has a 500,000
Oh.
followers on YouTube. But I invited him, and he did say, he looked at me and he says, we looked at it, and he's doing his podcast being paid by his company and stuff. And they said, well, we looked at it, you just don't have, enough subscribers right now, so I'm sorry, I can't do it. But I didn't feel discouraged. I felt good that I had asked him. And also, when I do have more subscribers and
Yeah,
I
you
come
say you
back and
remember
ask
you
him,
said if I didn't have, now that I
right,
have, let's do it. Yeah,
right,
that's brilliant.
right. So I encourage everybody, write your list of the top 10 people you want on, and then ask them, because the most amazing thing is, you know, th- with with a couple of exceptions, most people want to help you. If you're doing something and you're trying to build business or do something meaningful or help other people, most people are going to say yes to help you. And if you say, "Hey, could you do this?" In fact, I met with somebody who was a New York Times best-selling author. He was on the New York Times bestseller list for 15 years. He's, the CEO of a big company. He's interviewed by, Today Show and Good Morning America and everything. And I asked to have lunch with him to get some mentoring, and we did, and met up with him. And then when we were, I told him what I'm doing, and he said, "Well, how can I help?" And I think he was expecting me to ask him for money, maybe, to start my business. But I actually said, I'm starting my podcast, and it would be amazing to have you on as a guest because it would really help my audience. And he said,
Yeah.
"Sure." So that episode we're going to be recording next month. And so again, I just think it's really great to, you also have to know your why. Why do you want to do a podcast? And who do you want to help by listening to it or entertain or whatever? And I think when you're clear on those two things, on why you're doing it and who it's for, that everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah. Did you have any fears or doubts you wrestled with when you started your podcast?
Any fears about like what in
Like
particular?
what I mean is like a lot of persons they have doubts like, oh, my podcast is not going to do well and all those things. Did you have any fears or doubts you wrestled with before publishing?
Yes, I did. Well, my biggest fear was I said, "Oh, this is my first podcast and not used to being on here. And I've worked with a lot of top people, at companies. I mean, I worked at some big companies in Silicon Valley and stuff. And I was afraid of embarrassing myself or no, not even so much embarrassing myself because it's like I wasn't live and we were going to edit it. I was a little afraid that people might think, who does she think she is? Or why does she think she can do that? Um, and that's just, I think no matter what, we all have a critic inside and it almost doesn't even matter what that critic's going to say to you. It's going to find something. So if it wasn't that, it would have been something else. And I think I just had to recognize that, you know what? That's my coping mechanism for trying to procrastinate and put this off. And the best way out, confidence comes with competence. And I said, the only way to feel confident as a podcaster is to start it and get more and more competent every time. And I've heard so many people say who have best-selling authors, they look back at their first book and they go, "Oh my gosh, that book was so bad." But if they hadn't have written that, they never would have written the book that got them on the New York Times bestseller. So it was not a mistake to write. In fact, all it does is it shows how much you've improved. And so start it and make lots of mistakes and get them out of the way. So I just decided, you know what? I just need to get season 1 under my belt, and also I think too, and whether you're doing a podcast.
Quick break. Before we continue, I'd love to invite you to join the My Podcast Story newsletter. Each week, I share highlights from our guest stories, behind the scenes podcasting tips, and resources to help you grow your own show. You can sign up at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Entertain people or doing it to give them knowledge. I think that's why it's so important for me. See, what didn't hold me back was that I knew every day that I don't put my podcast out, there are more and more victims of cybercrime. And if I can help just one person avoid going through anything close to what I went through, then that's worth an entire year of podcasts. So I had to make that big. See, that is bigger than my fears.
Yeah, one of the thing is the reasons why, especially for the people who have educational podcasts, right? One of the reasons why it's hard is because we do not even have a deeper why we do the podcast. Because when we have a why that is bigger than our fears, then it's not like we don't have those fears. It's just like, oh, yeah, it's like something is bigger. Right? It's like you see some kids, right? When let's say they're playing in a place where they're not supposed to play, and their mom comes around, right? On the other side of the road, you see them start running, and they don't. A vehicle is coming, and they're not even afraid of say, oh, the vehicle is going to hit me. They cross because now they're like running or hide because their mom, they're scared of their mom.
Right.
More than
Right.
whatever the thing that might be there, right? And so it's the same thing. When you have a why that is deeper and stronger than the fear that you could have, what happens is that It's no longer, it's not like I no longer feel the fear. And I love what you said about confidence coming from competence. And that is the problem. The thing here is that for podcasters, our work, we put it out there in the world. So we are actually learning it in public. And so it's not like every other field where you can be practicing just within one or two persons. With podcasting, it's out there and people can see and listen to it, and it's way different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I was told too is like if you look at the top 10 podcasts, I don't know, the Joe Rogans and the Mel Robbins and the True Crime and all these, first of all, a lot of them are produced by networks. So they've got an army of, they've got 3 lighting people alone, and then microphones and editing, and they have all these broadcast studios um, and even if you take somebody who's just got a very successful podcast and they're an individual and maybe they're in year 8 of their podcast. And you think, oh gosh, they're so much better than I am and stuff. We have a tendency to compare ourselves to them and where they are now, but it's not a fair comparison because it's better to compare yourself to somebody's episode 1 and not to find a reason to stop or a reason to criticize yourself, but a reason to say, what are they doing, that I could be doing to make mine better? There's this rule of 1%, which is if every time you do something, you figure out what's one way I can be 1% better next time, whether that's the next day or the next week. Like, I have a weekly podcast. If I get 1% better every week, I mean, that's 52 weeks and it's exponential. So you don't have to, you can start anywhere and just look to get 1% better each time. That's very doable, and you're going to improve because we forget how much consistency over time. Like if you want to chop down a large tree with a big base, it doesn't seem like hacking at it with an axe would do it. But if you do one hack and another hack and another hack, and it might take 50 or 100 or 500, but that tree will fall. And we forget that, a small action consistently done and repeated really can change everything. So I think that we just have to give ourselves some space, to not have to do it perfectly, but look at ways to continually make it
Mom,
better.
I'm curious to know what was the breakthrough moment when you realized that your podcast was gaining traction.
Ooh, well, first of all, so I'm on 12 channels. I'm 12 things. So I'm like on Spotify and iTunes and iHeartRadio and 9 others. And then I also am starting a YouTube channel. But like my YouTube channel had like 12 people on it when I started, and they were
Okay.
friends, and friends and family. And but then to watch it grow, past 100 and 500, then it could just keep growing. And when I realized that people were subscribing that I've never met, and when I saw on my social media feeds that my posts of these things were getting shared. So, I have, like 3,000 people on one social media, and then I share it. But then one of them shares it with their 20,000. And when I saw things like that happen every time, I went, wow, and then I had people commenting on, you had to listen to this. This is really good. That was really helpful. And I think, you did ask me a question that I wanted to add a really important answer that I forgot to give, which is why, I started. The other thing was when I started being on podcasts, I've been on podcasts for a good year before I started my own company and did this. I just started talking about online safety. And I had a way that people could sign up for a newsletter. So it's really important you have a way that people can sign up for things, because not everybody is on YouTube and subscribing, and not everybody's, every different people have different channels. So I did create a way to capture their emails so I could send them life safety tips. So I didn't say when and I didn't say what, but I did make a commit, an implied promise that I would send them life safety. And I said, I've got to do that. And I've got a growing list. And all of a sudden, it grew past
I'm
a couple
curious.
thousand. And I was
What
like,
was the number?
what am I going to do? So
The newsletter subscribers.
So since
before the podcast, of course,
February,
like when you were guesting.
yeah, before the podcast, it was 570
That's a lot.
or something like that had signed up. That was a lot given that I was just a guest on
Yeah.
some podcasts and I kinda gave the random place for them to sign up. And I thought, wow, okay, they want to get life safety tips. And I said I'd give that. So I've got to do that. And then I was looking at my business and I thought, well, it's important when you're trying to build a business or, or just even a podcast that you don't spread yourself too thin. And I thought, well, I need to write a newsletter and I need to get life safety tips out and I need to be a guest on another podcast. And I said, well, you know what? If I did my own podcast, I would have, and I did it weekly, I would have a weekly newsletter and tips from each one to go out. And so now all of a sudden, I get to use a recording that I do, which is, an hour a week of recording and let's say 1 to 2 hours of planning or looking for people and making invitations and that kind of thing. So 3 hours a week. Now I'm taking care of getting an email out to everybody and with tips and being on my mission to help people, and I get things that are being shared and giving me more visibility, so I'm able to help more people. And so I just said, well, that's a no-brainer. When I realized that I could use that to
Yeah.
fulfill my promise to help.
Yeah. The thing about putting yourself out there and doing things is that it's later on when you've done all those things, you realize that, oh, how come all the dots are connected? But at the point in time, you're like, well, I mean, since I'm on the podcast, I might as well just share a link that they can sign up. And later on, say, yeah, I'm glad that they signed up. I could do this. And now everything seems like a grand plan that was put in place. But at the point in time, it was just, okay, I do this.
Mhm.
Let me do this. Let me try this. Let me try this. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that traction's gonna come where you don't expect it. Like, I had this little way that people could sign
Yeah.
up if they wanna get tips, but I didn't expect, I mean, after 4 podcasts to have roughly 600
Wow.
people sign up, I thought, "Well, that's more than I expected." So then I was like, "Okay, well, what if I did that?" And then I'm going on other people's podcasts and somebody who's really good at social media and stuff said, well, that's great, but it would be great if that wasn't the only thing you were doing, if you were doing yours and being on other podcasts. And I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I guess I just thought that, I think I was ultimately afraid of the commitment and whether I could do it. It's kind of like signing up for a
Yeah.
marathon. You're like, I want to do it, but can I cross that finish
Yeah.
line, And so but the nice thing is when you sign up for a marathon, you don't run it the same day. You have months to prepare, you get in shape, you get your mindset ready, you get your body ready, you get your gear ready. And then even when you run it, you just do 1 mile at a time, 26 times or
Yeah.
something.
The next question I'm about to ask sounds like the previous one, but it's way different. Right? What would you say is a
Mhm.
specific milestone that kind of validated your hard work? It could be downloads, sponsorships, or guest booking, whatever the case might be.
Oh, when I reached it, so I sat down at LinkedIn one day and looked up made a new list of 20 top people in cybersecurity I wanted to have on. And this is after I'd even gotten the one rejection. And I looked at them and I thought, well, I'm going to connect to each of them and invite them to be on my podcast. And then I'm going to send them one of the episodes that I think they would care most about. So, a woman who was geared towards as a business owner kind of thing, I sent her the one where I had a woman business owner on who had been hacked and almost lost the entire payroll for her large, salon business, which would have devastated her company. I mean, it would have been all the
Yeah.
profits for the year. So I personalized each
Message. Yeah.
invitation. So I spent about 20 minutes looking at each person I wanted to invite and understanding what did I think would matter to them and looking at what they, even like where they worked, where they went to school, if they had like on their LinkedIn profile, they say causes they care about. So if it's, you know, um, women or, children or whatever, I said, well, good. I've got a podcast on how to keep kids safe online. I'll send that one to the person who's volunteers their time to help kids. So just tailoring things like that. And I got all 20 yeses.
Ooh.
Yeah, and well, one of them said yes, but not now, probably not till early next year, and he's a top person in AI at one of the top, Silicon Valley
Well,
companies. So for him to give me a yes, but not yet, I thought, "Okay, thank you," so and guess what? even okay, they may not be on my show. They're not on my show yet, but they probably will be. And if I didn't ask, they
Will not
definitely
be.
wouldn't be on
Yeah.
my show.
Yeah.
They would never be on my show if I never asked. If I ask, they may be on my show, and there's a huge difference. And I think going from a never to a maybe is really important.
Yeah, I feel like we reject ourselves even before we ask, right? And this is one of the things that have been happening. And I have had this quote running on in my head that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And I've been trying out
Mm,
podcast promos. So I reached out to a couple of podcasters that I don't know, right? I got their email
uh-huh.
from like a database of people who are interested in doing podcast promo swaps. I just sent them an email and a message that, oh, I have this podcast and blah, blah. I just sent it. Like, nah, I wasn't expecting anything. I've gotten over 5 persons reaching out back to me, sending me their own
Oh,
promo, asking me to send mine back. And I just sat down and I was
oh,
like, it just occurred to me, like, dude, why are you surprised? Is it that you didn't expect them to say yes to you? uh,
right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I liken it to? I like what you said about I do think, all things in life can have their challenges and there's hurdles you have to overcome, but I think that we put 80% of them in our own
yeah,
way. Life gives you enough and then we do it. We make it 5 times more difficult. So it's kind of like, like I love soccer or
yeah.
football, depending on where you are in the world. And it would be one thing to get on to follow your dream, become a soccer player, and and get out there, and get to play, even if you sat on the bench, but then you'd get put in and you get to play. And I think what all of us do when we're thinking about doing something and say no is we put ourselves on the bench
Ooh,
and we never put ourselves on the field.
yeah,
So, and we all deserve to be able to get on the
yeah.
field and see what we can do.
Yeah. Thank you for that advice. What would you say? What would you describe as being the biggest roadblock you faced in podcasting? And what's the creative solution you used to get past it?
The biggest problem I had was not knowing how to start or what was involved or if I could do it. And what I did to get past it was I reached out to 3 people that I knew. I didn't know them super well, but they had podcasts, and I asked them if I could talk to them about how they put it together. And actually, from that, one of them, and then I talked to 2 people I do know who are friends who have podcasts. And frankly, I was a little more nervous to talk to them because to be able to tell friends who know me well that I'm thinking of this was a little more
Yeah.
intimidating than talking to a stranger. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but it wasn't. But so I talked to 5 people, and one of the people I talked to uh, had this great uh, person he had hired who did his podcast for him, and it was very affordable for a U.S. person. It was
Yeah.
overseas, and he says, I don't want to share him because I'm afraid he'll get busy, but I'll share him with you. And so I talked to him, and he told me what he could do, and I could afford it. And I thought, oh, this is better use of I don't have my argument to myself was that it would take too much time. So finding a way that I could get help. And I have another friend who needed to do the same thing, but didn't have any money to spend on it and ended up trading. She's a coach. So she got somebody who is a podcast helper who's trying to grow their business. And she's a business coach. So she said, well, I'll business coach
Oh,
you to grow your
yeah.
business if you help me grow my podcast. So they're doing a
Yeah.
barter and it's working out
Oh,
great. So there's no excuse for not, you can always find a way.
yeah. 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 Oh, thank, thank you for that. Like, wow, the question when we ask, how can I, instead of I cannot, a lot of possibilities open up.
Yeah. Here's another thing. One thing I had to do was switch my mindset instead of thinking like, why would this, really top person or famous person be on my podcast? Another thing to do is say, why wouldn't they
Yeah.
be on my podcast? Why wouldn't they say yes and help me knowing that I'm trying to serve this group of people and grow my business? And, every famous rich person, I don't care if they're Oprah Winfrey or Richard Branson or whomever, they all know what it's like to start. And in fact, those are some of the most generous people with their time and money you're going to find on the planet. So entrepreneurs and people who have started and everybody who's famous or a CEO or anything started somewhere. And most of them are willing to help anybody who's trying.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you're willing to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, I want us to get behind the scenes of your podcast production.
Okay.
Quickly, could
Okay.
you run us through how does a typical podcast production look like from idea to publishing?
So I go through, I do a couple of things. One is I look at the the annual calendar for days related. So you can go to things like nationaldays.com and things. So like, for instance, October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And then there's, National Change Your Password Day. There's World Password Day. There's World Protect Children Day and things like this. So I made a calendar first of major events that are external that I don't control, but that exist, because that gives me the opportunity to also, when I post it, use the hashtags and time certain things. So like people who are great at talking about how to protect kids online, I said, well, I got to have those topics um, go live that week, so I need to
Yeah.
record it. So first I put together a calendar, and I just used a basic spreadsheet for that. So I have one tab that has a list of days. Then I have another that has the publishing date, and then on another tab I put all the people I would want on. And for that, I I looked at other podcasts on related topics and found the list of guests, listened and found a guest I really liked. I said, "Oh, I want him or her on my podcast." So I put their name and a link to their website or Facebook profile or whatever. And then I asked ChatGPT. I said, I described my podcast and I said, give me a list of 100, top people I should have on to help consumers learn how to protect themselves. And it generated a list of 100. And from that, there were about 80. I haven't even gotten through it all. It's in my tab and I go through it. And then every week I spend, you know, sometimes some weeks I don't get to it, and other weeks I spend twice as much time. But I average about an hour a week towards reviewing and recruiting and outreach
Yeah.
of guests and potential guests. And I find a way to reach out to them through LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or if they have a website, I go through their contact us on the website. And I put together hi, my name is Jocelyn. I get to the point quickly. Say, I'm the host of Smarter Online Safety Podcast. I'm on a mission to help everyday people live safer, better lives. And I would love to have you on as a guest. You would inspire and help my audience. And when you think about it, if you get an email like that, what are you going to say? No, I don't want to help you. And no, I don't want to help all those people. So most people are going to do it unless they
Yeah, I
absolutely
can't.
are either a jerk or they're genuinely busy. So I just have that and I use some, and I personalize it each time. I thank them for something they've done, or I tell them something I like of theirs. It's important that people don't feel they're getting a
Yeah,
form letter.
spammed.
We all get spammed and stuff. So to just say, hey, I really enjoyed your book, such and so, and this is, and I did such, chapter, when you talked about this in chapter 7, I applied that and it really helped improve my life. Thank you. And now I have a favor, now I'd like to, I have an invitation or favor. So then I would tell them something personal so they knew that I actually knew who they were and I wasn't an automated LinkedIn, in mail or something. And then I would just tell them why I want them on the podcast. And so I do that. And so that's kind of how I do the recruiting. And then and then did you want to know like the actual like
Okay.
recording
Yeah.
time?
Okay, the recording. What
Yeah.
do you use for recording?
So I use
Okay.
Zoom and I use Zoom. I have a mic. I looked up, what are the best mics and got some
Okay.
advice on what are good
What's
microphones.
the mic you're using now?
This is a Yeti,
Okay.
and I want to say it's a Yeti
Blue Yeti.
Blue, Yeti Blue. I
Blue
can't,
Yeti. Yeah.
yeah, Blue Yeti. Sorry. And I have it. I travel a lot, and so it comes in this great
Yeah, it's
travel
portable.
case,
Yeah.
protects it, and I can put it in my suitcase, and it's smaller than anything else. Well, it's not. And some of them were so small, but they weren't good. So I had to find.
Something that was good,
Some were too
but not.
small and some were too big, really good. So I found one that was just
Yeah.
right. It folds up. I've taken it to Europe. I've taken it to, Costa Rica. I've taken it to Asia. I can take it anywhere with me. And I just use my computer and plug it in. I have a light. I have a couple different lights that I can travel with that give me, like, I have a lighting thing on me right now because it's getting dark and I'd be in the shadows. And I've recorded in hotel rooms where the light, you can't control the
Yeah.
lighting and they don't even have a freestanding lamp. So I think it's really important that you have a travel
Yeah.
lamp that you can throw in a suitcase or briefcase if you travel. And so I do that. And I'm really glad I did, because one thing too, I got called by a network cable TV when there was a big cyber outbreak and asked to be on as a guest. And I was able to be on even though I was remote because I had my
Yeah.
equipment with
You're
me.
ready.
So when you start podcasting, remember, people are gonna start seeing you as an expert, and you could have somebody from a major news network call you up and want you to be on. So you wanna be ready to go at any time, so you get to say yes to those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. Thank you
Mm.
so much for that tip. You have a portable mobile setup that, you just put it and boom, you're ready to go. So, like, oh yeah, I could shoot, but my this and this, it's at home. Oh, maybe let's fix a different dates. And you're like, no, we want to do it now. Okay, what would you say?
Right.
There are so many AI tools and so many automations and all those things happening right now. What would you say there are some tools that are absolute game changers for you, whether it's recording, editing, or promotion?
Well, I think, that's a great question, and I remember I do have support with this, so I know they use, um, I don't wanna speak to them, but they're just a great team, and they put together and they'll fix the audio. One time I was recording on Zoom, and I put the timer on so I could see it for myself, and it was the first time I had used it, so it actually recorded, so above my shoulder was a timer, so you need to be able to have editing tools to edit things out. So I can't speak to the specific editing tools because I can't remember what specifically they're using, but I think there's definitely things you wanna take advantage of for getting like, you wanna promote on all the social you can, and, then you wanna use things like Linktree so that it's easy to share all your
Yeah.
social, media
Just
and set up a profile.
I'm curious right now. So, is there someone handling the production of the podcast for you? Okay,
Yes,
okay, okay. So you do the pre-production, the recording,
right.
and then they handle with the editing and the posting and all that.
Nope, I'm having that done, and that's where I said that I found somebody and, because you know what? That's the thing that I'm not as good at, and if I were just podcasting, I would do it, but because I'm building my
Yeah,
company, I can't afford to put the time into it because I need to be building out the programs and helping the clients, and we have customers come in, and I do workshops, and I thought it's more important for me. So I think something for everybody to think of is, if it's a good use is it a good use of your time to do it? Or is there a way that you could invest the same amount of time or less in, because see, I'm not really great at that, and it's tedious to me, and I'm better at finding guests and doing other things. So my superpowers are not in the editing room. So it's better for me to figure out how to do something that would earn the money to pay somebody to do for
yeah,
me what I'm not good at. Or like I told you about my friend who she has the
yeah,
person editing
yeah. It
for
could
her,
be the barter
and then
system.
she
Yeah,
trades but she coaches, but she does coaching for her, so she's not paying me
yeah.
money. So you can get creative about how you
Yeah,
do
you
it.
could either pay cash or you pay in kind. You do the trade by barter
Yes.
system. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Um, I just I'm looking at it now and I just realized that we are kind of short on time. Okay, just one question. If you could if you could go back to day one, right? What's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Mm, one piece of advice. I think it would be I think instead of hitting record and being nervous about talking to my computer and ultimately, tens of thousands of people. I think it's important for me to think of, it's called a persona or an avatar, but think of somebody like I think of this person who's in my life who means a lot to me, who was one of the people I thought of when I said I've got to figure out how to solve
Yeah.
for this and help protect them. So it's I think of her, and I think what I would do is go back and I would talk on the podcast to that one person. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One is it calms down our nervousness when we're thinking that, like, if you're thinking you're like recording a video you're going to send to them because you can't talk to them live. Let's say you're in different time zones. And if you're thinking about recording your podcast so that that one person can hear it, I also think you're the audience will hear you like you're talking to them, because we talk as human beings differently if we're talking to one person than if we're talking to a room full of
Yeah.
people. And when we record a podcast and it has this like, oh, it's like a radio show and it's all these people are going to see it. I think we talk like we're talking to a room. So my advice would be talk to her, and I know who she is. Record it for her. If nobody else hears it, she can hear it, because then I would be less nervous and I'd be more personal and and I would just, I'd be warmer, I think, and just, and less. trying to be like a
Yeah.
broadcast news anchor.
Well, thank you for that advice. Now the last part is rapid fire fun questions, right? You just rapid fire, you
Okay.
just get answer. You ready?
No, but we'll do it anyway. That's the other thing. If
Ah,
you want to do a podcast, you're never going to be ready, so just do it
oh
anyways.
yeah. Okay, by the time you're ready, it's already too late. Okay. Okay. The first one is favorite podcast you've ever guested on.
Ooh, that's kind of hard. Oh gosh, let's see. Favorite podcast I've ever guested on. Oh gosh. Oh, people are going to get mad at me for picking a favorite, but I'm going to say on Kim Sorrell's Heart and Soul.
I know that name. I know that name. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've interviewed her. Yeah.
Yeah, she also has a TV show and everything, but she cares so much about, and she engages the host, she engages the guests so well, and she's so interested in helping her audience, and she's got such a dedicated following because of that. So she's a master
Okay.
podcaster.
One habit you credit for your podcasting success.
One habit. I think it's keeping my list active of possible guests and topics, and then I try to match them up. So I have a whole list of topics, and from like days, and when I hear about a cyber attack or something, I go, oh, I need a topic on this. Oh, children's baby monitors in rooms. I need to have that. So my habit is I don't let those things in one ear and out the other.
Okay.
So I think that's important.
What's a book, tool, or resource you can't recommend enough?
About podcasts or about anything?
Okay.
I can't I'll tell you, it's Alex Hormozy's $100 million
Okay.
offers.
Okay.
He makes you think about your audience in a new
Oh,
way.
okay. I'll definitely read that book. Okay. Well, what's next for you? Any bold experiments or pivot plans on the horizon?
Yes, I'm going to do a 3-day online safety challenge launch, and so that people can come in and learn how to be 10x safer in just 3 days than they are online, and learn the basics. And I've already started. It hasn't come out yet, but I've already recorded it into my podcast, so I'm committed. So
Okay. So is there a date for that event?
it's going to be the middle of August right now. We're doing a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think it's the 13th, 14th, and
Okay.
15th.
Wait.
And then if you're
Let
listening,
me see the date. You said
yeah.
middle of August, so people can just know when that will be. Do they have to like sign up or
Oh,
RSVP for the event, or they can just show?
yes. You need to sign up because it's going to be in a Zoom room, and it's going to be on August 12th, 13th, and
Okay, 12th,
14th.
13th, and 14th. Okay, so do you have a special link for them to sign up for the event, or how can they sign up for that event?
Where it's not out yet. I will get it to you so you can post
Okay,
it. But yes, well, here's the thing. You can come and sign smarteronlinesafety.com. If you come there, you can
okay,
sign up.
okay. Where can listeners learn more about you and your podcast?
Well, you can come to smarteronlinesafety.com, or you can go to YouTube if you want to see the video recordings with, and not just the audio. And it's Smarter Online Safety, or you can look at Safer Jocelyn King. And I put that because there's more than one Jocelyn King in the world, and so, but I'm the life safety one. So
You're the original.
Safer Jocelyn. There you go. There you go. And also, I'm Jocelyn King, the queen of online safety. So
Ooh,
there you go.
yeah.
If you search for
I'm going to make a YouTube video episode on how I got a high profile guest on my podcast, and you'll be the one I'll be talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
wow,
Great.
thank you so
Well, thank
much.
you.
It's been an absolute delight
Thank
chatting
you.
with you, and you just mixing the advice with stories and everything. I was like, I'm sad that it's the episode is coming to an end.
Well, this has been wonderful, and thank you. And it's the middle of the night for you to accommodate my California schedule. And I just want to say a big thank you to that. I think that shows the kind of dedication you have to your podcast and to your listeners. And we're all fortunate that you're doing your podcast because we get to learn all these wonderful things that you make possible for us. So thank you for what
Oh,
you're
thank
doing.
you so much. That means a lot to me, and thank you for letting me know.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I hope you enjoyed listening to this journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And don't forget to join the newsletter at mypodcaststory.com/join for more stories and podcasting insights. Until next time, keep telling your story because someone out there needs to hear it.